Hello, Jet Setters. I'm Jeb Brooks from greenergrass.com, and right now I'm in Greensboro, North Carolina. We've entered 2021. It seems like this is a good chance to look back at 2020. There's no doubt it was a pretty terrible year. We lost so many friends and family. Businesses shuttered, careers were cut short, plans were upended. There was a lot to feel sad about. But there's also some pretty good things that happened in 2020. I got engaged to the channel's creative director, for example. Despite the headwinds the world faced, I feel incredibly fortunate that I was able to experience some travel adventures in 2020, and these are the top 10. Number 10, the inaugural A350 flight for SAS between Copenhagen and Chicago. This epitomizes what pre-COVID travel was like. Back in January, I went to Copenhagen in order to experience their inaugural A350 flight back to Chicago. That's right, there was once a time where we could cross borders without giving it a whole lot of thought. And that wasn't really all that long ago either. While the cabin wasn't all that different from the A330s, these A350s were replacing, the service and the food were outstanding. And I'm always a sucker for an A350 flight, especially one over an ocean. Before we move on, there's a link to all of these videos in the description below, along with a playlist for all the videos I made in 2020. I hope you'll check that out. Number 9, St. Helena to Cape Town. This flight will go down in history as one of the most beautiful approaches I've ever experienced in my life. It was a February evening and the sun set slowly behind Table Mountain. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. Cape Town is my favorite city on the planet, and it's views like these that make it easy, I think, to convince other people of its preeminence. Spoiler alert, though, this is not the last time this junket in the South Atlantic will appear on this list. Number 8, South African Airways A350. I can't tell you the number of times I've thought about this flight. It was, after all, my final international flight in 2020, and it was only in February. Now, this was a last-minute change. I'd originally planned to return with Delta from Johannesburg to Atlanta on a 777, but it turned out I needed to get back sooner, so I switched my routing through JFK on this beautiful A350. South African Airways has had its struggles, to be sure, and I feel really fortunate to have flown with them on what was certainly a flagship route for the airline. Number 7, Delta 777 retirement flight. If this were the list of the most bittersweet flights of 2020, this would be number 1. Flying on one of the last Delta 777 passenger flights was certainly memorable. And this October trip from Atlanta to Los Angeles was a remarkable way to mark the end of the 777 service to Delta. Now, one of my favorite aspects of having developed this YouTube channel is engaging with a community of fellow aviation enthusiasts like you. And just as with the SAS A350 flight, this flight brought together so many other aviation lovers. It was just a real pleasure. Number 6, United CRJ 550 from Greensboro to Chicago. Ordinarily, a regional flight from Greensboro to Chicago would not make any list, well, except for when I did the inaugural CRJ 550 flight, but I digress. Let's face it, this is far from ordinary, and the reason is pretty simple. This was my first flight after being grounded for 130 days. Who says I don't fly economy? We flew to Chicago to pick up Amtrak's Empire Builder train to Glacier National Park. My head was glued to the window the entire time, and I was richly rewarded with views of, I guess you could call it my ancestral home, Berks Garden, Virginia, and a stunning, absolutely stunning parallel approach into Chicago with a 747. Number 5, Alaska A321. I've flown with Alaska before, but experiencing their first class on board an A321 between Los Angeles and Seattle was really remarkable. Not only was it a great flight, but the A321 we were on was decked out in a special livery celebrating the merger with Virgin America. The flight was great, but not just for what happened inside. I did name Alaska the Jeb Score award-winning first-class airline of 2020 after all, but also for the incredible views outside. Number 4, airports revealed, Cincinnati. I've always loved airplanes, but over the last few years I've developed a newfound passion for airports. I feel fortunate to have gotten behind the scenes at Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky International Airport, where I got a sense of just how hard airport operations professionals work. We also explored a bit of the history behind the airport.
Hello, this is the 90s calling. We'd like our lounge back.
And highlighted its vital role as a cargo super hub. I'm excited to share more Airports Revealed episodes with you soon. If you like aviation and travel, be sure to click the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any of the future videos that are coming your way. Number 3, KLM Amsterdam to Cape Town. What great timing our captain had on this flight. This was his retirement trip. It was in early February. The crew, including his first officer, also known as his son, planned lots of celebrations for him. Passengers were even invited to write a postcard to the captain. This is also a good time to say thank you to all those hardworking aviation and travel professionals who have suffered tremendously this year. This has been a year like no other. And as I mentioned earlier, so many careers cut short or interrupted. And I am just so grateful to all of you who work so hard in this industry that we all love so much. I know it's been tough, and I'm just so grateful to you for all you're doing, and I'm excited to get back to a sense of normalcy sometime soon. Thank you. Number 2, discovering Amtrak. I've always liked this saying I heard once, that constraints drive creativity, and nothing could constrain a traveler quite like lockdown orders and passports that don't work or borders that are shut. So that creativity led me to discover Amtrak. I have had the good fortune to take 3 trips on Amtrak this year, and each has been memorable in its own right. I traveled about 4,789 miles on trains this year, and I think we're pretty sure we're going to be back on board soon. We traveled on the Empire Builder from Chicago to Glacier National Park. I rode on the Cardinal from DC to Chicago. We got engaged at Baggage Claim 2 in Chicago O'Hare Airport before we picked up the Southwest Chief all the way over to Los Angeles. Each trip was memorable in its own way, but taken together, this is the number 2 best trip of 2020 because of just how wonderful the whole experience was. Before we move on to number 1, it's time for a couple of honorable mentions. JSX is a really cool airline with a unique business model. Their flights leave from FBOs, and because of their structure, passengers only need to arrive a few minutes before they depart. My brother and I took this trip in January, and we even met a celebrity on the flight from Phoenix to Burbank. That trip out to Los Angeles also allowed me to have a little extra time at the world-famous In-N-Out Burger right there at the end of the runway at LAX. It allowed for some incredible plane spotting, a really memorable experience getting to do that. And one final honorable mention. It goes to my home airport, Piedmont Triad International Airport, or GSO. I sort of made the predecessor to Airports Revealed in the summer when I was able to hop in my car and just go be near an airport. And that was a really special experience. That was a fun one for me. The number 1 trip of 2020, it was flying to St. Helena. Just in case you haven't seen that video, St. Helena is an island in the middle of the South Atlantic, thousands of miles from anywhere. Only recently have you been able to fly there. Before, it was only accessible by ship. Back in February, this trip required more planning than just about anything I'd ever done before, and it paid off in spades. The flight in was incredible. I met some awesome people. I was even able to get behind the scenes in the airport to really understand how the operations work, which made for a really fun video. I made several videos sort of around that trip. One of them made an honorable mention, or I guess an earlier mention in this video. But it was just an amazing trip. And it was also the first time that COVID really got my attention. We had to fill out a form on the flight to St. Helena. That approach into St. Helena was absolutely amazing. The island itself was fascinating, and again, the people I met were all fantastic. This trip is one that's not lost for superlatives, and I really hope once the borders open up, it's safe to travel. I hope you're able to experience it for yourself. But which is your favorite trip from 2020? Leave me a comment below and let me know. Between now and the next time, see you in the sky.